All right. Hi, Richard.
Hi, Fran.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm sitting here in Bali. It's really raining like crazy. We've had
Well,
intermittent power outages, so I hope we
all
can get
right.
through all of this. And yeah, and I hope the rain doesn't make too much noise.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Hopefully, we don't have a power cut and we complete our recording today.
Yeah.
And I think that today is very important recording because it shows how scalable is Trinity, or if you are already in that level, Trinity have the capacities to do many things. And one of the key things that the CEOs are concerned, or the board of directors sometimes, or many times are concerned, is not is only that Trinity capacity into doing their multi-site when they have the one single entity, is when they have other business in other countries with other regulations, other requirement, other compliance, and they want to see and different legal entities, and they want to see everything from the top. So I mean, it's a multi-company challenge that they have. We always mention that Trinity is today the problem is mostly a technological challenge, and Trinity is coming here to address some of them. So I think that today is a very
Yeah.
important topic in terms of how mid-market enterprises or MMEs can address these challenges today with a solution that doesn't have to go and spend millions in other options that are in the market.
Yeah, you'll probably note as I go through this material that it's along a similar theme to our entire product set,
Yeah,
right? Basically putting GRC reporting as a outcome as opposed
yeah,
we reimagined this concept as well, monolithic ERP, and we came up with our own take on it as an alternative, especially for MMEs and
right.
SMEs that have multiple companies. So I'm going to open up a little bit of a presentation that I've
Right.
prepared for this. Okay.
Okay, fantastic.
All right. So we'll just
Just
get over there, share it, and let me
yeah, it's
enlarge it
coming up
here.
to
Yeah, I just need to
okay.
enlarge it.
There it is.
Okay,
Perfect.
great. All right. Now, what we call it is Trinity C4.
Right.
All right. Now, that's not the explosive material. C4 stands for clarity, control, certainty, and command. Right. And
Perfect.
whilst it will have an explosive impact on a business that's looking for strategic oversight, um, yeah, that's not why we called it that. We wanted to capture the acronym of
Yeah.
those pillars that we stand on. Basically, the concept is empowering strategic oversight across multi-entity organizations. Now, I
Right.
say entity instead of company because it might be divisions that are autonomous,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. If it's multiple sites of the same business, that's already built into the cake of Trinity
Right.
because we have business unit hierarchy and that can include site level stuff. But when an entity is autonomous, it's in another country, or it's a separate legal or taxable entity, or it's a subsidiary of
Right.
some sort. We'll just refer to it as entity.
Yeah.
Anyway, so basically, this presentation and the tool itself, who is it for? Multi-entity SMEs. And by entity, I mean like separate accountings, right?
Yeah.
Separate general ledgers, that kind of thing, right? And mid-market enterprises that are on a growth scale. And what do mid-market enterprises, as they start to get bigger and more multinational, what do they typically do?
Yeah. They go to big ERPs and say, we have a problem here.
That's right. That's right. So this is targeting those companies, the
Mm.
owners, if group level executives,
Yeah.
GRC leadership,
Yeah.
strategy owners, board members, or consultants to any of those people, right?
Right.
So with a structure like this, where you've got a group level that has its own concerns, right,
Yeah.
across multiple entities that are typically operating in an effective way, right?
Hmm.
These are the people responsible for managing governance, risk, and compliance, strategy, and metrics across multiple operationally distinct entities,
Right.
companies,
Yeah.
subsidiaries, divisions, that kind of
Yeah.
stuff, right? Okay. This is the problem, the way I see it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's that, sorry, I just need to move this a little here. Okay. Operational execution complexity scales linearly as you add multiple entities, right? If you have 3 companies, you have 3 companies worth of operational execution complexity. It's just that simple, right? But GRC alignment, strategic stuff, becomes exponentially harder to align on if you don't have the right tools, right? When there are a few systems in the individual entities themselves, or each entity uses different systems, right?
Yeah.
In most cases, the only thing reliably functioning at each of these companies, because you got to remember, this is a growing company, right?
Yeah.
And if they're looking at Trinity for EAM and ERP and GRC, they wouldn't typically have all of those systems anyway. But regardless, those companies would typically at least have an accounting system.
Yeah.
It's been my experience that you go into these MMEs and they got accounting and accounting and accounting. They might have a few other tools, but almost always they've already got their accounting, right?
Yeah.
Group level oversight is, typically remains manual, incomplete, reactive.
Yeah.
Right? Governance and strategy oversight degrade as you scale and you hit a red zone. And then, when that red zone kind of kicks in, when things start getting too difficult, too complex, instinct kind of kicks in. We need a system for this, right?
Yeah.
The real challenge at the top isn't operations or local accounting practices. Typically, I'm not saying there's no operational challenges or no accounting challenges. I'm just saying those aren't typically what the biggest challenges are. Typically, the biggest challenges are GRC alignment, group level metric clarity, etc.
Yeah.
Okay. The standard playbook, when that happens, when complexity reaches a breaking point, the go-to solution is monolithic ERP full system consolidation. Let's get let's go get the big ERP guys in here.
Yeah.
Right. Coupled with that, as a cost efficiency to balance off the expense of the monolithic ERP, they start talking about shared services. Almost always, 80 to 90% of the cases, right? And it's a bit of circular logic. The shared services are supposed to capture cost efficiencies because of the ERP. And the ERP facilitates the shared services. Each one ends up kind of justifying the other. I think it's kind of funny sometimes. But shared services are not a flawed concept. If you have similar functions going on in terms of HR, compliance, finance, IT, then you can consolidate them, right?
Yeah.
But doing it because you have a big ERP system coming is not the same thing as justifying it as a standalone. So basically that standard playbook is one system that rules them all, full data integration and traceability, right? You promise process standardization across the group, right? Simpler training, less variance. Central control via shared services, which will give you efficiency and headcount reduction. Sounds great, right? End-to-end visibility, real-time insights at every level.
Right.
Yeah. And enterprise maturity, right? Can't say this isn't a factor. Now we operate like all the big guys. Yeah. We have a big ERP, a big ERP. Vendors and consultants in that space present this as the inevitable path to scaling up.
Right.
Right? It's almost a foregone conclusion that at some point you're going to reach a level where you can afford a monolithic ERP because the cost will not be insignificant, right? And until you reach that stage, what do you got?
Yeah.
What's your solution going to be? Right? That's a bit of a question.
Right.
Oh. The problem with the solution. So you had a problem.
Yeah.
Right? You got a typical playbook solution, but there's a problem with the solution. What really happens in a lot of these monolithic ERP rollouts? Now, look, I don't want to rain on everybody's parade who are going with monolithic ERP implementations. I've seen some successful ones. The dirty fact is, in amongst those implementations, the failure rates to deliver things on time, on budget, and get the ROI that was forecasted is anywhere from, it's a solid 60, 70% that it's not going to be as on time, and that's me being very, very generous. Some people have forecasted 80%. One or the other is going to happen, that it's going to drag on longer, or it's going to cost way more than you thought, or you're not going to end up with the outcome that you were expecting, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So what really happens is when they're promising you these unified systems and real-time insights, you actually end up kind of with fragmented modules, partial adoptions, and reporting gaps because of the expense of the rollout, right? You might have one business that really doesn't have the profits to support a monolithic ERP implementation, but it gets dragged along with the others, right? And typically it's like we go with the core system for everybody, get everybody on the same page.
Yeah.
And then you start rolling out modules to various ones. And not many companies have the budget to hit them all at once, right? Anyway. The promise of streamlined shared services, operational gains will be there if it's done correctly, but there's rarely strategic alignment. There's some operational alignment through shared services.
Right.
But you got to remember, you're a multi-company entity.
Yeah.
Each company is, by virtue of that fact, likely to have, especially if you're a diversified business, it's likely to have its own strategy that isn't applicable across the group. So you can't shared service that, right? Standardized data and metrics, great, but constant reconciliation and mismatched definitions is something all of those projects struggle with, is getting all that stuff to match up, right?
Yeah.
Strategic oversight from the top, well, you're still reliant on ad hoc reports and local insight gaps. You still have to pay attention to the local company. You still have to look into what's going on because you're not going to get that report from a financial consolidation.
Right.
We're talking about governance, risk, and compliance, right?
Yeah.
The problem, and GRC and performance clarity. Typically, that's like an end game. Getting GRC across a whole group is like the last part you're going to be able to deliver, right?
Yeah.
It's the last module that you'll have to stack on top of everything else. It typically remains siloed and unmeasured across the group until you reach that point. By then, you've spent millions, right? So the problem isn't typically locally accounting, but the solution always seems to start by replacing it. Right?
Yeah, like let's standardize everything or harmonize our organization. But
harmonize,
sometimes they forget that it's a local laws or local regulations. I mean, in different countries, even in different states, particularly in the US, that
look, this isn't
harmonization.
I'm not painting it all with one brush and black paint, right? I'm just saying that you and I have been doing this for many, many years. We're both from the enterprise space. We're both from the big, monolithic ERP worlds. So we know where from we speak. We know what to watch out for. We know when we would recommend it and when we wouldn't recommend it as a strategy, right? ERP isn't needed to run shared services, by the way. It's not a justification that you want shared services, so you need a big ERP. Alignment through governance and policy can be just as effective.
Yeah.
Right? ERP rollouts often justifies themselves through shared services, but rarely change how local entities actually operate.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. What companies really want, in my opinion, which I'd say is kind of, a little bit of a qualified opinion, although a lot of guys would argue with me, and that's fine, right? It's not just operational execution. It's strategic certainty across the whole group.
Right.
Right? the assumptions behind ERP is if we consolidate accounting and centralize execution, alignment will follow. Maybe. But that rarely happens in my experience, does it get to that point? And you've gone through years of transformation before you'll find out if that's going to be the golden goose at the end of all of that work, right? What do leaders actually want that I have heard, that I've seen, that has informed the design of the tools that I've built? First, they want clarity. They need visibility of the right things across those entities, risks, priorities, etc. Right? They want to define what those things are as consolidated metrics. Okay. Yeah. They want control. They need policies, not just processes that scale, especially in the ESG world. Right? They want certainty. Right? They need reliable, timely data, not only for assurance purposes, but for decision support. Yeah. If it takes a month to get a report, a group level report, it's too late for you to change anything. Yeah. Right? If your year-end report is what you're depending on to find out if all of your business is compliant, sorry, but it's too late.
It's too late.
It's too late, right?
Particularly now with this regulation that are coming into place. Like
people say that, ESG. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll be in 2 years' time, but actually you need to prepare that now. It won't happen overnight.
That's correct. And last but not least is command. Yeah. They want to be able to intervene strategically without disrupting local operations.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So I believe that's right. Where we come to, what is C4? Right? It's a strategic overlay for multi-entity organizations.
Right.
To deliver clarity, control, certainty, and command. C4, right? It's a group level layer that aligns governance, strategy, and metrics into a single visible window, a command layer that sits above local systems. It's a unified view of governance, risk, and compliance, and strategy, execution, and performance, right? It's leadership stuff for leaders. That's what it is in a nutshell. It's also quite lightweight, fast to deploy, and it's not disruptive to the local business.
Yeah.
And it is a highly cost-effective alternative to monolithic ERP consolidation for growing multi-entity SMEs and MMEs. I'm not saying that we are head-to-head against these big monolithic ERPs that have been around for 30 years and counting. Okay, that's not what my position is. My position is that by the time you start wanting that and the time you start being able to afford that is a big, long gap, right? And I believe that gap needs to be filled.
Yeah.
From the top down, not from the bottom up, right?
Yeah.
What C4 is not is just as important as what it is. It's not a replacement for local accounting systems. Okay. So it's not disruptive in that way. It's not a forced standardization platform, like operate locally and govern as a group. That's the way they want it to be, right?
Yeah.
And it's not a circular justification for shared services. Those should stand alone as a cost effectiveness.
Yeah.
And of course, you can execute shared services across Trinity and C4, just like many systems, but it's not a circular justification. C4 basically empowers strategic leadership across entities without tearing out what's already working.
Right. So there's no broken point to fix it, but you have to measure what is going on to make decisions, and you want that measurement and that decision to happen now, no with a lag of months, perhaps sometimes.
Yeah. Keeping in mind that accounting is typically what's already working. Yeah. They want to operate more effectively, so they put in Trinity, right? And then the next question is, what if I've got that in multiple locations, right? Well, you don't want to have to decide to go from our company to company implementations with all those awesome GRC outcomes.
Right.
and switch over to a monolithic platform that's going to replace all your accounting systems and not deliver you the GRC outcomes.
Yeah.
Right? So what makes C4 really powerful is, first off, central dashboards, GRC strategy, metric visibility across all entities with drill downs, that kind of thing. Gives you strategic oversight, right? Group level visibility on the execution of strategies without disrupting local autonomy.
Yeah.
It consolidates metrics, real-time, traceable performance metrics across all your entities. Many of those are determined by compliance frameworks, governance frameworks, ESG frameworks. Some of them are performance metrics that you want across the company, and some would be accounting metrics.
Right.
Not all your transactions, but maybe a few metrics. Yeah. It's also alerts and escalations. So there's exception-based signaling that drives focused intervention where it matters. Yeah. Right. And when that happens, there is some multi-directionality here, right? It's not just reporting. In some cases, there's strategic command where you can take control and edit and manage strategies, assign tasks, and raise group level alerts, right?
Yeah.
The advantages to this approach, this top-down tool, which is specially integrated because we know all of the local systems, it's Trinity plus here accounting, right? Is it has a modular rollout. As you roll out each entity one at a time, say you were 3 companies, now you're implementing Trinity to improve local operations. Say you're on the 90-day certainty program, right? If you're choosing, if it's part of the plan that you're going to put in C4, we will be rolling out C4 for that location at that time.
Right.
You go to second location and we integrate that second location with the C4 implementation. You go to the third one and we integrate that one at the same time. There's also technically it's possible for us to roll out at 3 individual locations and C4 at the same time. Although I would suggest that big bang approach is probably not the best way to go. I would. Yeah. It's technically possible, but I wouldn't recommend it. Right. Yeah. And it's non-invasive. The one thing that I don't like, is monolithic ERP is typically built around financial consolidation first, operational execution second, and governance, risk, and compliance a far distant third.
Yeah.
Right. I believe that it's best, unless you're experiencing issues, to preserve local autonomy. The reason you bought the business, et cetera, et cetera.
And probably you're very familiar with this. The local leaderships usually present the most resistant to this kind of changes because it's literally it's a way they operate fundamentally change for something that they have to relearn to do and reoperate again with something that they've been doing in the market very well for many, many years. And all of a sudden that's where the biggest pushbacks come in these organizations. And I wouldn't say sabotages, but we see funny stories
there's no active sabotage, but there is definitely resistance when it's a JV partner, especially who's not used to operating outside of that local environment. Maybe they're a JV partner, a new one, and you're this multinat who's jamming monolithic ERP down their throats, and they're like, well, we got involved together because it's working. Why are we going to wipe out what's working? We can put in some operational effectiveness with an EAM / GRC tool, but don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Yeah. So that's why C4 came along. That was its birth, and then we built it up to be everything you need at that group level and nothing you don't need at the entity level. Now, if a company insists on financial consolidation of their general across the board, by all means, they're still out there. They're still charging prices, and fill your boots. But I personally don't think that should be the only option. is that you stick to your spreadsheets until you're ready for the big guys. No,
Yeah.
that's I get offended by that. Right? This is how it works. 4 simple
Right.
stages
Yeah.
to the multi-entity oversight, right? At the top, you've got the C4 tool.
Yeah.
Okay. It's Trinity. Yeah. Same simple interfaces, same easy to use, right? And you're going across your entities and you're basically layering Trinity
Yeah.
on top of accounting at entity A, entity B, entity C, right?
Right.
You connect them, basically, you're linking those multiple instances into a
Yeah.
single command layer.
Right.
You normalize your governance, your strategy, and metric definitions across the group. Okay.
Yeah.
You unify by applying consistent policies and oversight logic and
Yeah.
alignment tools, et cetera, et cetera. Basically, now you've got a mechanism for separating is A equal to B equal to C or
Yeah.
not? Is strategy missing from C that's there for B and A, et cetera? Did we
Yeah.
tick all the boxes there? Are the metrics aligned? Even currencies, and from a transactional perspective,
Yeah.
at the C4 level, you get to choose a unifying currency and the exchange rates for
Right.
any collected data for the various business units. And so you can come try, you might have a transportation company and a manufacturer. That's an apple, that's an orange,
Yeah.
right? But if you squeeze the juice from either and mix it together, you've got something that you can at least digest, right? Like we want them to be able to merge it together quite easily, and we've actually got wizards for being able to select that A equals B equals C, right?
Right.
That
Right.
kind of stuff for alignment. And then you also want the last stage is being able to command. At the C4 level, you can have create, read, update, and delete privileges over the actual strategies across the whole. It really depends on how
Yeah.
atomic you want to get in terms of command for the
Yeah.
various business units. You could just want to observe and intervene maybe with a task here, a question there, et cetera, et
Yeah.
cetera. But intervening where it matters with clarity, certainty, and minimum friction. That's the
Right.
idea.
Right.
Now, this approach, C4 is really lightweight. It's built for scale and speed and strategic clarity, not
Yeah.
more complexity.
Right. And I like it because it doesn't require to offload or download data from any other system and then upload it into a business intelligence tool to try to get the same pictures. You go right into Trinity to Trinity. So Trinity, if you see entity A, all the information from that Trinity migrate to C4 and the same for the other ones. So then pretty much you have the unification of the data without friction. So it's literally the human error
That's right.
there is pretty much null if it's well set up and well maintained. And this is part of the responsibility of the governance of the company, right?
Exactly correct. That's what it is. You can consolidate for reporting purposes across a
Yeah.
BI tool.
Yeah.
It takes a high degree of skill, lots of
Oh, yeah.
work. However, and it's not like there's no effort involved in implementing C4.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that it's natively built to be
Exactly.
that
Yeah.
tool for, our own platforms. And
Yeah.
so we're able to do more than just the reporting. We're also
Yeah.
able to do comparison. This is the layer upon which we'll also have the AI and
Yeah.
machine learning and
Yeah.
and you can also have a two-way communication, with
Right.
the command module, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah. So I wanted to do a quick comparison. Now I know this looks like it favors us entirely,
Yeah.
but yeah, okay. So how does Trinity plus C4 compare to your alternatives?
Right.
Well, from a financial consolidation point of view, spreadsheets won't do that, right? Let's just call this the manual method that somebody's doing, want a system, need a system, but
Yeah.
they're looking at this as their alternative. They will
Yeah.
get financial consolidation. From a Trinity perspective, only top level metrics that you want captured
Right.
are going to be in there. We're not consolidating your journals, you know? GRC alignment, you're not going to get that from spreadsheets. That's one of the reasons you're struggling, right? With monolithic ERPs, you will get compliance administration with the typical GRC tools that are out there.
Yeah.
What you won't get, you might get, you won't get policy-driven strategic alignment from them. You'll get compliance administration, right? Now it's a subtle thing. But remember, I mentioned in one of our previous sessions that the GRC tools don't handle ESG, and the ESG tools don't handle GRC.
Yeah,
that's kind of because of this, right? You don't get strategic oversight automatically with the monolithic ERPs, or well, you could with spreadsheets, but you'd have to do it manually.
Yeah.
Shared services support, everything but JRC, sure.
Yeah.
Trinity, optional, strategy driven, right?
Right.
Local system disruption with spreadsheets, none. With a monolithic ERP, it's major disruption.
Yeah.
With Trinity plus C4, it's none. It's fully non-invasive putting the C4 tool on, right?
Right.
Deployment times, pretty fast to create a spreadsheet. Monolithic ERP, 12 to 36 months. That's 1 to 3 years, right? Trinity plus C4 is about 90 days per entity to get it going, right?
Right.
So I would say in this particular situation, when you're facing growth and you need scale, you finally have a third choice.
Right.
Trinity plus our C4 tool.
Yeah. Fantastic.
In summary, very quickly.
Yeah.
C4 delivers clarity across governance, strategy, and performance.
Right.
It's control without consolidation. It's certainty without reporting projects. And it's command without disruption.
Right.
And that matters because it aligns multi-entity organizations at the top, not at the bottom. It works with what's already in place. It deploys fast, scales easily, and preserves local autonomy. It's built for GRC, not financial plumbing.
Right.
It's everything you need, nothing you regret.
Wonderful.
That's it.
Right. Okay. I think that we're running out of time. So, probably we need another session just to go through this and comment more specifically on use cases, if you may, because there's a lot of information here. I think it's very valuable particularly for board members, non-executives, and CEOs, and probably CFOs and COOs too, because actually that will show them how they can operate lighter, but with all the tools that they need to really run a company that is growing, that need to scale, and they need to have this control and command about what's going on in multiple entities.
In the future, we'll record some demonstration of the actual tool itself, an actual alignment, and actually, demonstrate some alerts and some command, that kind of stuff. Looking forward to that, but I wanted to introduce the concept first. Top-down strategy. Just imagine.
Perfect. Yeah. Okay, Richard, thank you very much, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thank you, Fran. Take care.
Bye-bye.